We talk about a sort of feeling in the country that we've never been at a more divisive point. That have we ever seen our country so pulled apart? And you know, I'm a student of history, and I think we have had times when we've been this pulled apart. And one of them was 1968, and you had Bobby Kennedy's assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination. Nixon was elected in a landslide. The war in Vietnam was raging.
Domestic terrorism, you can go on and on.
Rioting was happening in cities across the country. And what I think is worth reflecting on is how did we pull out of that? And what role did journalism play in pulling the country up and out of a war that history proved was ill-fated and wrong?
But
that was great reporting in My Lai that did that, if you remember, with Cy Hirsch, investigative reporting. We also went after an administration that said the press are the enemy. And actually, Woodward and Bernstein went very hard into that presidency and ended up doing great investigative reporting that changed history and ended up with President Nixon resigning. I think it's a moment for us to focus on great journalism, not be deterred by some of the failings of the past, and not be deterred by a tenor in Washington that's going to attack the media. It's time to be strong, it's time to do good work.
But would the Cy Hirsch article on My Lai, would that have been widely distributed and read in order to make change in today's world where you have such a diffuse amount of journalism on social media? You know, David Fahrenthold did terrific reporting at the Washington Post during the election, and people that attack the media en masse maybe didn't read his reporting, which was trying to hold both the candidates to account, but he, you know, his beat was Trump, and so he looked very deeply into his business connections, into the potential conflicts of interest there. Those stories were reported, and yet they didn't seem to be picked up en masse.
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, I think one thing we have to do is stop and unpack the word media. Media is very, it's being kicked around these days, and it's too big a word. Because you have people in a basement in Macedonia fabricating fake news stories that we all know about, that were just pure, unadulterated lies put out through social media. So is that media? I would call that just criminality. That's something that exists in the dark corners of the web right now.
Right.
Then you have, in the middle, you have websites that may not have the same standards as traditional media, that may have a little bit more fast and loose with the rules. And then you have the cable networks that have seen a business opportunity in going to polemics. Now that's MSNBC on the left, and that's Fox News on the right. Then you have networks in the middle, like CNN, that have done a lot of good work through the years, but are struggling right now financially. And in Donald Trump, they saw ratings, and they went for it, and they've had record revenue. You have newspapers like the New York Times and the Washington Post that have staffs of some of the best journalists in the world who work every day very hard to get it right. And you have others like Breitbart that are looking at sort of stories that I think are very disturbing in the way they are a dog whistle for racism, for sexism, for a lot of the really darker aspects of what has come across the media landscape. So the landscape itself is varied, it's complex, and we can't really talk about one media.
Sure.
But when you talk about, could Cy Hirsch today tell that story of the My Lai massacre, and would it resonate the same way? It's an excellent question, and I think we do need to worry about what happens when we live in a world where facts are devalued, where truth is seen as malleable, where we can't even agree on the same set of facts anymore as a country. How do we have an enlightened debate? I think that's the challenge of the future of media, is how are we going to come across in a way that we're trusted and we create a new future for this. The way I think we're going to do that is it's not going to be me. I am not a digital native. I'm part of a traditional media background, but I get it now that young journalists will figure this out. They will find a way forward, and we're going to empower them not only as journalists with good standards, but with an entrepreneurial spirit. Right now is a time for entrepreneurs to create new models of journalism. I'm going to hope they hold on to the great values of traditional journalism, but push forward into new ways to tell it. We need them, and we really need this generation to be empowered.